Welcome once again. This is the Brattlecast. Always fun to be with you. I'm Jordan Rich, and I'm always very pleased to be with the man himself, Ken Gloss, proprietor of the Brattle Bookshop in Boston, one of the most famous bookshops, I think, in the country, perhaps the world, and we talk about it and some of the goings-on. Ken, nice to see you as always. You're looking chipper, and it's nice to know the snow has ended, at least the big stuff.
You know, it's very interesting what the snow does here. And I've been getting a lot of questions and calls and actually feedback, and people are wanting to know, how does the store run? What's the day-to-day process? They've been asking me to do a few more podcasts and episodes on not a specific book or item that's come in. How does the store work? What are different ways do we go about things? Even in a way, a little bit, how does the snow affect us? How does the weather affect it?
Right.
And so I thought the next couple of podcasts I do on sort of day-to-day things. Of course, I'll probably go off in tangents in any case, but
You a tangent? Come on.
but so I thought I'd talk about a few of those things, buys and things we've done and how that we've gone about.
Well, the first one that we're going to touch on might be a world record in the Guinness Book, the longest transaction from start to finish. I mean, some might think, well, it'll take a couple of weeks, a month, 2 months. This one's a little bit longer than that. You want to start the story?
Some of them take a day. They go immediately. But when I first started working full-time at the store for my father, that was in 1973. So that's about 50 years ago. Probably about five years into that, I got called from a library. I won't say the name of the library, but in Massachusetts. And they wanted me to come out and look at some of their books. And I said, sure, I'd be more than happy to. And when I got there, they had some really, really nice books in beautiful display cases. The librarian said, we're thinking that this isn't quite appropriate for our library. And a lot of these books that they had originally, because it was in a mill town, getting from that mill town to Boston in the 1800s was a long voyage. And for the people in the town, they wanted to have the books, or for the manufacturers, the reference. And so I went out and I looked, and actually I was really taken aback by how good the books were. And I worked up, I probably spent a day working up an appraisal, a proposal, and the librarian said to me, and this was probably probably the 1978, in that period, 1980. And the librarian said, well, we'll discuss it with the Board of Trustees. And I didn't hear, and I didn't hear. And they said, well, they're still thinking about it. I sort of put it in the back burner. 5 years later, I got a call from her again, and she said, one of the trustees is thinking we should pursue this again. Wrote up another proposal, and almost the same thing happened. 10 years after the initial, I got called back again, and she said, well, again, we're thinking of it. Could you come up? Now, a lot of the books were in beautiful glass cases on display on the first floor of the library. When I got there 10 years later, well, half of the books weren't on display anymore. The glass cases didn't look quite as in good shape, and went through the process again. And again, the librarian said, well, the Board of Trustees isn't. Another 10 years went by. So now we're talking 20 years out.
My goodness.
And the librarian was thinking of retiring. And she said, I'd really like to get this done before I'm about to retire. We go through the whole process again, and nothing, again, same thing. So we're 20 years into this. At about year 27 or 8, the librarian did finally retire, but she introduced me to her successor. And the successor said, well, I don't know what's been going on in the past. Why don't we start this process up again? Went through the whole process again. Again, almost the same result. 8 years after that, though. So this is 35 years in.
Okay.
I get a call from that librarian and said, look, I think we're really ready at this time. Went back, all of the books had been moved, and I went with my manager. All of the books had been moved out of the glass cases up to a third floor into a storage closet where they also kept the cleaning supplies and the janitors and so on. And I was with my manager and I said, well, let's look. So the books were heaped up, and I was pointing out to my manager, I said, oh, do you want to see a page from the Gutenberg Bible, which is the first printed book? And I reached under the pile and I pulled that out, and my manager's looking there. I mean, that's a $50,000 page of a book. Illuminated manuscripts from the 13 and 1400s, folios of Audubon's animals. There was literally in this collection close to $1 million worth of books that had gone from beautiful glass cases up to the janitor's closets. And I finally said to the librarian, I said, look, first of all, these books shouldn't be piled up next to a janitor's closet. Also, your security. What happens if something goes missing? Who has the keys to the janitor's closet? It's not good for your staff, even. And she said, well, we think we can maybe do something, do a presentation. And what I did this time is I thought they were a little bit more serious about it. And there were a lot of very, very specialized books. And I went over the special collection. I called in a number of my colleagues, one who specialized in illuminated manuscripts, one who specialized in early printed books, one who specialized in big color-plated books. And I did this for a reason, and I do this in a lot of cases. When you start getting to the very high numbers of value, but also they know this field inside out. Now, I was very fortunate. A lot of times they agreed with me on what the prices were. In combination with 4 people, we worked up a bid. And this time I thought they were a little bit more serious. And I thought the necessity of doing this because of the way the books were being stored, they were uninsured. If anything went missing, the staff could be in problems. I thought we might really get somewhere. And quite honestly, another reason I called in a lot of the experts and specialists, I said to myself, gee, if they're going to call in a whole bunch of people to get bids on this, which I thought they might be doing, I'd rather partner with the people who I think are best at this, so I won't be bidding against them and their friends and colleagues. So finally, we got a bid together 35 years down the line. It got presented to the Board of Trustees. I got called in twice for a meeting to the board. So I said, this is starting to get like it might really work out. Finally, the librarian called me and said, the Board of Trustees has approved this. We're going to talk now to the city departments, but they don't really have an override on this. Sat down, talked with the mayor in a meeting. The mayor wasn't thrilled about selling anything, but he also realized that the library really needed to do something. We finally came down and they agreed to the sale. So I called in all my partners. There was lots of books to move. We were thrilled. We wrote a check it was just slightly under $1 million.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's one of the bigger checks, I have to admit, that I've ever written. We got the material. There was some wonderful books there. Between the 4 of us, we were selling things. But as we finished moving, when the check got cashed, the librarian followed up and called me. And again, this has been a 35-year process. And she was happy. My first reaction was, uh-oh, what's going to go wrong now?
Right.
And she said, no, we're very happy. It was just about, there were a few other things that they wanted to talk to me and follow up with. And I said, this has been going on 35 years. Was there something going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about? Oh, she says, oh, yeah, absolutely. There was one member of the Board of Trustees who didn't want anything to go out of this place. They didn't want in any way, and they were a very, very influential member, influential in the town, influential in the city. They died.
I was going to say the only way out of this is somebody leaving the mortal coil.
And that's exactly what she said.
Oh
Yes, he
my God,
died a year and a half ago.
that's what did it.
He was the one who, in every board meeting, and nobody wanted to go against him. So it was 35 years. And I didn't realize that I had to wait until this one person. But the interesting part that followed up on that is when she had called later, she said, we have some more books. We're reconverting areas of the library for computers. We need room. That was a $60,000 sale. We were very pleased. And then just recently, I got another call, and they were doing another area of the library, and they just needed everything out of that area. We worked at a great price. So actually, it's still going on almost 50 years later.
You would probably win the national award for the most patient bookseller and book buyer in America.
Yeah, well, in a way, it's patience. But one of the things, and I do this with almost all of my clients, and I don't know whether this puts me in a good perspective of how people think about me or not, but I normally try very, very hard, even when something aggravates me, not to say anything.
Mm.
And one of the thought processes that goes through my head when I'm doing that, if I say something and say I'm upset, is that in any way going to help me? Is it in any way other than me sort of spewing it out? Is it going to help me in the future? Is it going to maybe lead to other deals? Is it going to hurt anything that we're trying to get done? And in most cases, I say no. And usually I feel really good about it. I might get in the car and yell. uh,
I can't help
but
but thinking, Ken, before you continue, I can't help but thinking libraries are known to get upset when you're overdue with a book. They were a little overdue, maybe by 35 years with a whole bunch of books.
they were overdue. But, the people working at the library, and quite honestly, I even understand the man who didn't want to sell anything. I understand that he wanted things in the town. He wanted the best for the town. Uh, I didn't agree that that was necessarily the best, especially after things started getting piled up and not taken care of.
Mm.
And they honestly did not have the money for the staffing to take care of it. But going back to the getting upset about things, when I do get upset, I actually get more upset that I got upset than just saying, you know, if you're happy, healthy, business is overall well, one thing or another is not going to affect it that much.
Well, you are an open book, no pun intended. Thank you so much. What a great story. All kinds of great stories on the Brattlecast. And go to brattlebookshop.com to find out more. Ken, as always, we thank you.
And I'll just say that if anyone calls me on an estate or library, I do prefer to get it done quickly. I don't know, but I'll be more than happy 35 years from now if I'm still able to do this.
We'll be doing our 9 millionth podcast by then. So, yeah.
It will both be 100-something years old. It will be wonderful.